We're going to start early. Watch yourself. Thank you. I know you all came because you wanted to hear me talk. So, for the next 25 minutes, I will discuss the topic of
overcrowding.
Actually, yes, that's a good point. I'll talk about fire regulations.
Sky City would be interesting.
Oh my God, that's a bad line, Penny. In the event of an earthquake or anything worse, follow me.
No way.
So it gives me great pleasure to welcome Dawn to her first public address.
Yay!
In Christchurch. She said, what should she cover? And I said, just talk about yourself. And so she is, and there's no questions on policy tonight at all. I answer the policy questions. No, if you've got any questions about policy, I think I saw the Deputy Mayor walk in the back. So
where are you, Andrew?
Yeah. This is people from Yorkshire sticking together, and the old expired Dean, he's from Yorkshire. And it's just a thicket of Yorkshire people. So, Dawn, welcome. Over to you, and I'll now move the microphone down.
Dangerous weapon.
Yeah, poke Peter in the eye.
Peter, just watch out with him.
Well done, Lorraine.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
There we are.
As long as you don't tip it in his beer.
Those at the back, I do exist because you can hear the voice. You've got no chance of seeing me from the camera. All right.
Stand on a box.
Believe you me, I've done that in my
You've done
time.
it, a lot of wood.
So, as you can tell from the accent, I'm not from these parts. And I've been brought here under false pretences. Because I got told in my meeting, it said, you're going to meet Gary Moore. Well, I thought, that's fantastic. He happens to do one of the best songs that I really, really like. And then this bloke turned up yesterday. And I thought, what was that all about? False pretences. So I'm going to take my jacket off if that's all right. Yeah.
Speak into the microphone.
There we are. So, and a packed house, so crikey, I'm not sure I've come back for a second event whether it will be as packed as this again. So I thought, first and foremost, I thought I'd tell you a little bit about myself, because that might help. And for colleagues who have Irish and Yorkshire heritage, you do the translation services for the rest. Really good. So my name is Dawn Baxendale. I do believe in evangelical work, because although I'm from Yorkshire and my father's family are from Ireland, I am married into a Lancastrian family.
Ooh, okay. War of the Roses.
Yeah. Absolutely right. So we're still at it, and that's a bit about being in evangelical work, because I do believe, and I will have been married 30 years next year. So I'm very committed to family. It's really, really important to me. I have two sons, Jacob, who is, excuse your bag, stick out there, who's 20. He is doing a physics degree with astrophysics at Exeter University, so he is not here with me in New Zealand. I'm trying to convince him that when he's finished his degree, that he can do his economics masters here. So, yeah, so there's some quite interesting things that can do. And then my youngest son is Elliot, and my staff have heard me say this is 2 L's and 2 T's, for any reference please, original 16th century spelling. Elliot is 16, and he is here with me in Christchurch, and he started his orientation at college this week. So he's had to get his backside out of bed at 7 o'clock in the morning. And so, of course, he's been quite enjoying it, because he did his exams in May. and won't go to college until January. So he thinks it's fantastic because he's not having to do anything for this period. And then I have my lovely husband Scott, who sadly had to go back to the UK a week ago on Saturday, but he'll be returning to... Can you let him turn your hearing aids up? How about, let's take that off, I think it'll be a lot better. How about that? Let's get rid of this thing, shall we? Yeah, his heart's still ticking. And Scott will be returning just before Christmas, permanently. So you'll see a much happier smile on my face. So I'm a lifer in local government.
Yay.
I have just this year done 30 years. I have worked for all sorts of local authorities. I've also worked for the European Commission in Brussels in my early days when I came out of university, and I've worked for the World Bank in Romania at the same time as being a local government officer. I absolutely fundamentally believe that actually local government has the ability to be outstanding, but in doing that it's the consistency. How do we come our best and how do we stay at our best? And I have spent 30 years trying to do that. And that is predicated on a whole series of things. Because in reality, we are here to serve the public. But the public's voice is not just one thing. It's a whole series of competing voices. And our politicians have the joy and pleasure of trying to determine what that balance should be. And then it's people like me, it's our job to deliver that agenda. Sometimes we do it well, sometimes we don't, and there's a lot in between. And the truth is, and you see this all over the world in local government, is how do we really get good consistency on that performance and delivery, and how do we keep focused on what's important as well as what is urgent, because there are many competing priorities. So this is week 2 for me. What day is it? Tuesday, thank you. So I'll figure out what day it is and what time it is. So I will have been in the council 2 weeks on Thursday. I was really keen to come just before the election, and so I can see the new council, the old council out and the new council in, and so rang the sitting councillors and the new councillors on the Saturday, which was, I think they were quite surprised to hear this northern tone coming down the phone, but I think that's important in terms of our politicians. Sorry, wrong terminology. I think 30 years of indoctrination. Local councillors. Politicians are, of course, MPs. So I've been told. So it's important because I want to build a relationship and I want to be able to understand their dynamics. So, what am I doing? I'm doing a lot of listening. That's the first point, which is why it's great because the room's packed and it sounds like there may be even some people outside. So you're my intelligence gathering network. You're a whole set of people who are going to have lots of opinions. You're going to have lots of relationships that aren't just in this room but are going to be much wider. I will be able to tap into that, or I hope I will be able to do over the coming weeks, months and years, because that's how I will help me do my job better and my team do our job better. And even when you get to being outstanding, you've still got to continue to aim to do better, because the minute you stop, we all know what happens, you start to fall back down. And and I've said it to my staff as I've been going round, I absolutely know what it's like to live in the real world. I grew up in a house that was condemned for unfit for human habitation as a child, so I absolutely really do know what it's like to be in the most distraught situation, yet with the right support and the right challenge, you can become the chief exec of an amazing city, or whatever it is you choose that you want to be, if you can get that right support. So I'm building those relationships inside our organisation and importantly outside. So I will be doing ward walks with the members, they're getting booked into my diary. I'm making links with our key partners because I think this is about how you create a win-win conversation. The principles I think are really crucial, which is if you give up a little, you gain a lot. If you go into a room and it's, how do I get the most out of you? I'm not going to get that, am I? And that's the way I work. I won't be any different than that. I'm still a working class Yorkshire lass, and that's the reality of it, no matter what job I'm doing. So it is about building those relationships, board walks with my members, in with the community boards. We've been doing the induction programme for members this week, and of course meeting the community board members as well. Building with partnerships, and then building with our communities, and building with business. So the final bit I would say is, so what's my interest and what's my technical background? Well, my technical background is economic development and regeneration. I've managed community boards right on the front line, but then when I became a director, all issues around environment, waste, climate change, all the things you would expect, transport, etc. And then local authorities in the UK also have responsibility for education, in other words schools, and social services. So what the health board do here was in my responsibility in my previous roles in the UK. So the things that I might get involved in here would be, if I think about very recently dealing with knife crime in Birmingham, actually creating the partnerships and leading that dialogue with central government about how we create a different and better opportunity for some of our poorest communities where we were seeing young people dying, literally 16-year-olds. We had 3 deaths in the space of 2 weeks on the streets. You know, so getting involved in things that are just as important for the city life, not just about the delivery of a set of services. Because if that's all we do, we're not doing the job that I think we should be doing. So it's absolutely about how do we draw the best out of the city, and how do we think about all of our citizens, not just certain sections of society. Because we need to realise people's potentials, whether that's families, whether that's individuals, whether that's communities, whether that's communities of interest. Until very recently I also chaired a charity outside of work, which was an education business charity. I did that for on and off for 9 years, and that was working with some of our most deprived communities and youngsters, and linking them to businesses and creating opportunities around apprenticeships, internships, etc. And opening up the potential for young people to see what was available to them and what was out there, particularly if you've got a very narrow view of the world or your circumstances provide that. And on the other side, as I'm extremely proud of being the Chief Executive of Southampton and worked for Southampton for 9 years, I developed with my leader, which is equivalent to your mayor, a master plan for the city. We did that in the teeth of the recession, when everybody else was closing up shop in terms of not thinking and driving. And we said, no, this is the time where we want to be brave and we're going to shout about our place. Because Southampton hadn't done that. It had very internal conversations with itself and hadn't been building relationships outside of the institution. We launched a master plan, the leader did, equivalent to the mayor, for £3 billion, $6 billion over a 20-year period, and in 5 years we brought in £2 billion, $4 billion of private sector money. That wasn't about the council putting the money in, that was about drawing the private sector. When I say private sector, it's not just a traditional private sector. You would expect that to be commercial, you would expect it to be industry. Higher education and health are important sectors. For here, obviously, agriculture, really critical around what we deliver in service industries, but thinking about as well what's happening in our higher education institutions. They create the potential of wealth going forward in great thought and ideas. So I spend a lot of time working with our universities as well. But fundamentally, this isn't about just putting up glass buildings.
Volume for the mic?
Is it too high?
It's too low.
Not too low. Can you hear in the back? No. Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you.
No. Yes, fine.
Is that better?
Hello. Oh, bloody hell. Here's my fresh.
Got it?
Bloody hell. That's really very loud, isn't it? And it's squeaky. It's going to get quite a bit of feedback.
That's it.
Should we try that? You right at the back. Can you hear me? Thank you. So,
Say it again.
yeah. I'm not saying it all, Ken. You'll have to watch the video on playback. So it is about creating those opportunities of those conversations. You know, I'm 2 weeks in. I'm sure you're going to tell me loads of stuff tonight, much of which I may agree with, some of which I may not. But until I can go around and meet people and create those relationships, then I'm just sucking up information. But, you know, quite frankly, I want Christchurch Council to be the best council it can possibly be. And that's meeting lots of different demands and requirements, but it's also stepping up and providing that civic leadership in the truest sense of the word about the place. And for the South Island, that's really important, just as it is for the residents of Christchurch and Banks Peninsula, but it's also important for New Zealand as well. So we mustn't just think of ourselves as just this element of what we're trying to achieve. So, is that enough?
Tell them about your last council where you reduced the load.
Oh yes, financials. I'm not an accountant. I have a view about accountants and I've expressed that to Gary.
You didn't need to encourage that.
But the saying out loud is, you know, when you get your accountants and they all say the same thing, which is they can't add up without a spreadsheet. And I've worked with enough of them, I can tell you. But I do money really, really well. So in my last two councils as the chief executive in Southampton, we had a budget, once you got your netted off, of around £300 million, $600 million. We had a financial hole of £100 million, $200 million, so a third of our cost base. I managed to bring that down to just £7 million over a 2.5 year period. That's not about slash and burn, that's absolutely about concentrating both political leadership being clear about what they wanted and for us collectively working together to deliver that agenda and being cost effective, efficient about what we're doing. We have to think about things differently and to bring your staff along with you in that, because actually highly engaged staff deliver significantly more. Happier people go the extra 10 miles, never mind the extra mile. And that's really key. It's about how do you create a high performing, high support, high challenging environment. And when I say challenge, I don't mean abuse or aggression or horrible behaviour in terms of trying to get people to work better. I'm on about how you collaborate with people so that they really, really want to push really hard for their place and for their institution. So I closed that financial hole to the extent that once we got there, we were able to actually put more money into the coffers for the members to be able to reallocate in my final budget before I was sucked into, in the nicest possible sense, or pinched and went to Birmingham. In Birmingham was under government intervention, had an improvement board for 3 years. The fundamental was quite simply this: they basically had a year in which to get it sorted, and if that wasn't sorted, then the likelihood is the government would have completely stepped in, removed all of the politicians and removed the senior team. My job and the gap in there was £65 million in year, and if the spend had continued at that level, the council would have been bust in 2.5 years. That was done. I had a 12-month window, and I'd said to my husband, this is a high-risk job. I may get to the end of the 12 months and not being able to turn the tanker around, and if I do, it will mean I will not have a job. Anybody who knows local government in the UK will know that Birmingham is the birthplace of local government, and for Birmingham to go down would have been an absolute shocker for the sector. And so in the end, after much persuasion, I was decided to step into the ring. I was not expecting to be coming to Christchurch because I'd made a massive commitment. That commitment included me living in Birmingham through the week and just going home at the weekends. My family is absolutely crucial to me. And I'd got my son's place sorted out at college in the centre of Birmingham. I'd extended my notice on my flat and I was looking for a house. And I'd sorted out where the dog was going to go. And you'll find out about the dog, okay? And then my husband, God bless him, turned up and he said, I know you're really, really committed. I know this is personally important to you because you give everything to a job, and I do. He said, but... And out came the Christchurch job. And we'd looked at New Zealand in 2011, really interested culturally, politically, emotionally, actually really fits what we believe in. And in the end we thought, we're going to have a go. Didn't come off at the time. And so we'd been looking for the right thing. But Scott's mum became critically ill and we put it to the side because we thought, that's it, we're not going to be able to do it. Sadly, Mum died just over a year ago, and I think that was the trigger for us to be able to say, what's important to us now? What is it we want to do? What is right for us as a family? And we've done the pros and cons list, and because of my commitment to my job, I didn't feel I could do that change. But we asked ourselves the important question. Because the cut-off age is 55, and you're all going to say you don't look an age over 40.
35.
Thank you, darling. And cut-off age is 55, so if you're 56, it's too late. And I was 53 this year. And we said, okay, when we get to 56, when we ask ourselves the question, should we have done it? The answer, or would we regret not having tried? The answer was, you're damn right we will.
Cool.
Hence why the application went in. Thank you. So I will be your chief exec just as I will be the members' chief exec, but I will also tell you when I think you're getting it wrong, because that's the Yorkshire person in me, I won't be able to help myself. But absolutely, my philosophy is this: I have two of these. For those of you who are wondering, I'm touching my ears. And one of those. It's important to hear and understand what's being said, and then it's important to consider that, test it with the politicians, test it with the senior team, think about how that works for our workforce on the ground, and then say, okay, these are the conclusions. But that's me. I hope that makes sense to you. And I look forward to working with various guises of you over the next coming weeks, months and years. Thank you.
Now I'll move up the back so that the people that have been crammed up the back can ask the first questions.
What about me?
What about oh yeah, and Marjorie on the floor. Right, here's a question.
G'day, Dawn. That's very loud too, isn't it? Sorry. I'm really glad to hear you talking about turning tankers around, and because we have a tanker that we need to turn around globally, and that's the climate emergency. And having presided over Birmingham City Council when they made their climate declaration in June of this year, and when all 83 councillors unanimously voted to declare, which was fantastic, and I've read the climate declaration and they gave themselves one that really had some teeth. Fantastic declaration that focused on things like just transitions and real community engagement and collaboration. You probably know that Christchurch City Council declared a climate emergency about a week before you guys, and our declaration clauses are not quite as strong as yours in Birmingham. So what I'd like to know is how passionate you are about turning that ship around, and whether you have any thoughts or views on how you're going to strengthen the rather small unit at council that works on climate issues and provide more inspirational leadership for that unit. One of our declaration clauses was that climate and water would become the overarching priorities for every decision made, and we're very far from reaching that. So yeah, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on that, please.
So the first thing I'd say is, actually for me this is all about sustainability, and I know if the Mayor was here she'd talk about risk and resilience, because all of that is the same language around the agenda. The second thing I'd say is, in order to do anything you've got to be clear about where it is you're trying to get to. So the statement has been made in terms of the deadline, but actually you've got to do more than just say in the horizon it looks like that. And I said this in my interview as well, which is quite simply this: you have to be clear about each year, what does that mean? Yep. And what's the stepping stones to get to where we want to get to? And that's what I've been working with the team to actually think about at pace. So I've said it today and I'll say it again: there's Baxendale time, and then there's it could be New Zealand time, Christchurch time, pick whatever topic time you like. You know, how do we engender pace and clarity of delivery in that? Sure. And the other thing I would say is, it's like saying equalities is the equalities officer's job. Climate change is not just the job of a small number of people in the council, it's everybody's job. So we need to consider about how do we think about that in the way that we do things as a whole officer cadre. There's 3,200 people or thereabouts. You know, so it's activating people's thinking around that. And the other part, quite simply, is, and this applies not just to the council, but to all residents and businesses, actually it's down to individual behavioural change. That's the key that is going to drive very different things. And we need to think about what are the critical things that are going to give us the biggest leaps. Yeah? So that's the other part of what we need to be able to think through, is not just a whole shopping list of stuff, but think about each year, where do we need to get to, how do we create momentum in that, and then testing how we're doing. And the final thing is, we won't have all the answers, will we? The whole world in different guises is looking at this, so where can we learn from, nick it, bring it home, make it better, move at pace. So that's about all I can say at this stage, because as you can imagine, I'm on a mission of finding out what's going on.
I look forward to seeing how you do with that.
Thank you very much.
I'm told at the back here by your deputy mayor that nicking is a Yorkshire term.
It is. Yeah. There are other terms which I won't use this evening.
Hello, Dawn.
Yes.
I've got one question for you.
Where are you?
Who will you be cheering for on Saturday?
That's just not fair. The answer to that is both. Now, if it was the Irish, it would definitely be the Irish. If it was a Yorkshire team, it would definitely be that.
Right, questions?
There's a lady down here on the ground, getting a very cold bottom.
No, I'm on the carpet.
Oh, that's all right. No, I've got
Who said that?
I just thought you could do that here.
Right.
Yeah, I was going to say I'm not very
Turn your one off. Oh, okay. Right. Stand up.
That will be very inelegant.
Marjorie. You might have to stand.
Oh, stand. Good grief. Okay, hi.
Yeah.
Dawn, first of all, I have loved every word you've said, but even more the way you've said it. So, thank you. What a breath of fresh air and all that. What I'd like to hear is just a few more specifics of why you were so enamored with Christchurch. Thank you.
Right.
Are we on?
Yes.
So there are layers, it's like layers of an onion. So the first thing I'd say quite seriously is I'm attracted to places that have challenges. If it's an easy job, I wouldn't be stood here, because I don't operate well in easy. I get fractious and I get troublesome. So when I get bored,
It's the Irish.
it's the Irish, absolutely. So I'm not good if I get bored. Okay. So I do need lots of interesting things to do. So that's the first thing I'd say. Second, and those of you who are students of history and international behaviour, the world is fundamentally changing. Small and medium cities are the places that are going to really fly in the next 50 years and onwards. So that attractiveness of coming back to something intimate, and it may not feel intimate to you, but my last place was 1.2 million people. Yeah. So having something that's really intimate that you can get underneath is highly attractive. The third, because we talk about the challenge, and interesting, on my first day, at the end of my first day, I went to an evening meeting with the business community. And it was the first time in my engagement with colleagues of all shapes and sizes where I heard a little bit of negativity. It was the first time I'd heard it. And that was around, and I understand that. You've been on a journey, you know, dreadful, dreadful challenges from 2010, 2011, and then of course 15th of March. But you've been building and building, and there's a feeling that maybe we've plateaued. And then, so where do we go next? And then you got Bugger looks at me who turns up and says, hang on a minute, have you actually seen what you've got here? Because seriously, the opportunities and the potential is huge. And that's the stuff in terms of growth, but socially and environmentally friendly growth that thinks about well-being and delivers real impact for communities and families. Actually, the potential of that is huge. And you know, and it's not a political statement, but you've also got to think, in the UK, when you had the dreadful incidents on the 15th of March, the way your politicians at a senior level, at a national level as well to local level, reacted was hugely impressive. You know, and that is very attractive. On the other side of the equation, quite simply, I think the UK has gone mad. So Brexit, and I can't tell you what a joy it is not to have to read that every day. So you know, I work away from the largest economic world that, you know, well, and needless to say, so we decided we wanted to be somewhere different, but it had to be the right job, and it had to be the right place, because I was bluntly at the top of my career in the UK. I had 30 years of networks, excellent government relationships, fantastic business relationships. It had to be special. And as far as I'm concerned, this job is special.
I hope we live up to your expectations. Challenges we can give you.
Yeah, but I also am expecting support and energy and creative co-production.
No mai haere mai no mai ki Otatahi, and perhaps in the vernacular of your whānau back home, Slancha Ked me the Faucha. And thank you very much for your candid and friendly words tonight. It's really great. And I was just saying to Gary there before that imagine the reverse if one of us here was appointed CEO of Birmingham City and we had to go to the equivalent of the Tuesday Club in Birmingham 10 days into our appointment and front up to people. So that in itself is something you should be proud of. So thank you very much for coming along and talking to us. In the space of cultural diversity and the Christchurch has become quite quickly, relatively, a city where there are nearly 200 ethnicities dwelling here now, from a place where there weren't many ethnicities here at all 20 and 30 years ago. But I know that Birmingham, the profile of Birmingham, is a very multi-ethnic city, and you must have some very good ideas that you might like to bring in that space. And I wouldn't, and I don't think any of us will expect you to have all the answers yet for our city. But if you just had something that you might like to share that you might bring along in that space, that would be appreciated.
So, absolutely right, but I would say it's, because Birmingham's a fantastic city, but where I grew up in Huddersfield, actually our community was very mixed. So at primary school level at the age of 5, half of our class came from Asia. So it's the Indian subcontinent, Pakistan and India, because it's the textile industry, as was, because it doesn't exist particularly well anymore where I'm from. So I grew up in a place that absolutely was diverse. And when I moved to the south coast of England and I walked down a place called Lymington High Street, and I said to my husband, where is everybody? Because it was a sea of white faces, and that was just not normal to me. So I have a very eclectic group of friends from all backgrounds, colours, shapes and sizes and sexuality. Because I'm not, it would be on camera, I'm not a feminist, I'm a humanist. I believe in human beings. I think it's important to work with, wherever you come from, you're a human being. If I scratch you, you will bleed the same colour as I will. So actually, it's really important that we are respectful of people's traditions, but we're mutually respectful of those traditions, and that's crucial. Birmingham, a super diverse city, super diverse, and it will probably be the first place outside of London that will be the first city in the UK that will have a majority non-white population. But if you walk around Birmingham, it is alive with voices from all sorts of places, with great ideas and with energy. Because you're talking about people who have joined a place because they want to be there. They may have left terrible circumstances, but they've adopted their place. And that's what I would think would be the case here in Christchurch as well. People will have adopted Christchurch as their home, but they'll have different identities, whether that's from a Maori tradition, whether that's a European tradition, whether that's migrants who have come in the last 20 or 30 years. But they're still Christchurch people, just as now I'm a resident as well. And I hope to be a New Zealand citizen in 5 years' time. That's our plan.
Good stuff.
So it is about, first and foremost, respect, listening, and then having dialogue, whatever that might be. So I have done, and I'm going to get it wrong now, aren't I? I've done 2 mihis. I want to say mi-hi because it's the HI, that's why I say 2 mihis. I'm attempting that. I'm very clear that I want to learn the language because that will help me do my job better, and also to understand the culture. You have to adapt in a place. You don't want to remain isolated, and that's the philosophy I've always taken. And I come from an immigrant family myself.
Is that,
Yes.
is that okay? Dawn, thank you. I think it's already been said and everyone seems very impressed with you, as I am. You speak from the heart, but you also speak with intelligence. And you've obviously got a track record that's paid off. I have a question that probably a lot of people won't like me asking, but being a Dutch girl from way back, from coming from an immigrant family, also knowing what it is to be hard up, I just can't come to terms with your remuneration, but it's so hard. What's that?
Look, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, but
Red toast.
that question was that salary level was set by the council. It's got nothing to do with Dawn at all.
Exactly.
I'll rule that question out. Right.
Gary, there's one next.
Hang on, there's one up the back.
Hello, John. Two questions. You can't see me. Yeah, I'm over here. Don't worry, we'll meet. So, two questions. Firstly, I'd like to cordially invite you down to our uni. I work at CCC in the TSD department on the first floor. So I would like to cordially invite you down to meet us, and I'll buy you a coffee.
I drink tea.
Actually, I should have known that, so I will respond to "Hey up me duck." So, born and bred in Yorkshire, Doncaster.
Worked in Doncaster.
Yeah, a lot of people have. So, the second question that I wanted to ask, because you made reference to it earlier, do you have a whippet? That's a Yorkshire joke.
Can you explain that?
I can explain that. So we are dog mad in Yorkshire and we race whippets. We also have flat caps and ferrets. So that's the stereotype for you.
Ferrets?
Ferrets.
You didn't bring any of them, did you?
Yeah, and just so you know, the chaps put them down the trousers, so beware. So I don't have a whippet, but what I do have is a Labrador Beagle cross, and he is coming out in early December because he's part of the family as well. And if the dog couldn't have come, I wouldn't have been here.
Peter.
Yeah, kia ora, Dawn. And you can get Yorkshire tea at New World down. Can't beat it. Graham, good to have you with us. Welcome, welcome. I live in the east, and it's early days, I know, but I want to put a plug in immediately. We're part of a thing called the Avon Otago Network, and for the last 8 years we've been working really, really hard towards achieving the green corridor, the extraordinary thing that's now been agreed by the government towards the green spine down to the coast. So it's great. Plans agreed, but there's a hell of a lot more to do in terms of governance, how that's going to happen. We have a new council, we have 6 new members, we have a new CEO, and I'd like to invite you on behalf of Avon Otago, an Eastern Vision, which I can be very quickly soon to catch up with you, so we give you a good grounding on all that. If you haven't had a chance to get out in the east yet, you've got to go. It is most amazing. The opportunities are fun.
So I accept your invitation, thank you. And I'm very clear, so, and Andrew will know this at the back, my office has made my appointments with every single member for me to be able to walk their patches and see it through their eyes. But I would remind you, councillors are not just elected for their ward. They are also city councillors, and they have a dual role in which to take. But you, as I've said to my own staff, so and it will be, where's my chappie at the back? There he is. Actually, the staff is not just the civic. Our staff are all over this city, and therefore I've done 4 staff meetings, 3 of which are out at the civic centre. So I will absolutely get myself as much as possible out and about. It will never be enough because I do actually have a job to do, as much as swanning around outside. But crucially, I want to be able to get to all parts, and I want to be able to understand it better, because the better I understand it, the better I'll be able to do my job. Thank you for the invitation, I accept.
Thank you.
Kia ora hui tātou, kia ora Dawn. I'm Kathleen and... No, thank you for coming tonight to talk to us. There's 2 things I was concerned about in the paper that was reported. The first thing that was said that you were going to change the culture, and the second thing was said is that you're going to be involved in cost cutting. And I'm concerned about being an accountant, like Gary. I'm concerned about the implications of both of those things. When you consider cost cutting, are you considering things like cutting council staff? Are you considering asset sales? Are you considering cutting your own salary? What sort of things are you concerned about? It's very concerning.
So Dominic, are you here still? Yeah, I thought you might be. So first and foremost, it's important that the council is as efficient and effective as it can be, and that was what I was talking about.
Yes.
Because actually, it's public money, and that's really important that we do that. And in reality, actually, my politicians will expect me to manage that budget within budget.
So you're suggesting that it's not efficient at the moment?
No, what I'm saying is everybody can make ourselves more efficient, even if you are operating well, and I think this is a good council. I don't think it's a poor council. But actually, it is about how do we think about doing things so we can be more effective. And that staff will have loads of ideas about that because they're doing the job day in, day out. And that's what I'm asking them. What are they seeing? There's always bureaucracy in all institutions. So how do we make it easier so we don't actually spend our time dealing with red tape? So that's the first and foremost, because I think it's our duty to be efficient and effective. And I've said, and I've written to staff, I wrote to staff before I got here, which is I'm not interested in restructuring, because in reality I need to learn the organisation first. And things are different. Certain things are very similar, other things are different. So I need to understand that. And in reality, you wouldn't forgive me either if the budget was well over and I hadn't managed that budget with my politicians properly. So I'm being very open about that. It's about how do we do this right, and how do we make sure we're making the right decisions that our members wish, and ensure that that delivers the services that they are committed to delivering. And until I know more, that's as far as I can get at this stage.
Dawn, I'm not actually a city resident. I've come in about 60 k's to enjoy this tonight. But I have been a public servant for about 30 years and a private sector winemaker and private sector scientist for about 12 years. So I've been around the block, and the whole of my career I've been hearing this mantra of doing things better, doing things more efficiently, more effectively. And I'm just wondering what you know that a whole generation, or two generations of public sector accountants and private sector accountants didn't know.
So I think actually some of the issues are around, quite simply, how do we use our data better? Because often, and in many public institutions, we have lots of data, but we actually don't use that intelligently. How are we creating and understanding the evidence to help us make better policy and better decisions, which means then we implement better? So those are the things that I'm interested in. I set up one of the first insight and intelligence services in Southampton in 2013 that helped us understand how we could manage our position better. And what's really attractive about New Zealand, and again it's not about politics, it's just about how you're approaching things, you have a government that's looking at the budget in an outcome focused way. That's making different decisions in a different way. We in local government can learn from that, as well as bring our own experiences to bear on that. So those are things I'd say are evolutionary, they're not revolutionary. But how we do that, importantly, is understanding whatever decisions we make, what impact that's having, because there are always unintended consequences. So the better understanding that in the first place will help us do our job better.
Good answer.
Hi Dawn, Aaron here behind the video camera. I'm just trying to shield the microphone from my feedback there. It is hard to look forward and imagine where some changes to the organisation may be made. But filling the holes that you described, to £100 million hole in your previous position, and then a £65 million kind of deficit within 1 year. understanding that the local government sector is responsible for different things in the UK compared to here, could you just give some broad outlines of where those savings may have been found, if you're responsible for health or transport or local government and that kind of thing? What were the areas that you were able to find efficiencies in your previous positions? Thank you.
So I repeat, it's not just about efficiencies, it's about how we do things differently as well. So as a whole series of events, it's actually taking, on the one side, how do we grow our economy better? Because in the UK, actually, more and more, our resources in terms of local government are funded through business rates and council tax. Whereas traditionally, it's actually been funded primarily by central government, and that has reduced over the years. So in the United Kingdom, local authorities have received a 50% cut in terms of their resourcing, but are expected to deliver significantly more on the back of that. So you have to think completely out the box, otherwise you just can't operate.
Just say no.
Well, you can't quite say no because you're not allowed to say no in many ways. You actually do still need to deliver because you're required under statute, not dissimilar to New Zealand actually. So there's an issue about how do you create more opportunity, because if you do that, if you're able to get people into employment, their demand for certain parts of your services reduce. So in terms of social services in particular, for children's services and adult services, where you're talking about the most vulnerable, creating opportunity there actually means you get less demand through the front door in terms of people needing those services, because they're in a better position themselves, for themselves as individuals or for their families. It's a very different approach than saying, what can I do for you, but saying, what are your strengths? Where are the opportunities? What's your family networks like? What's your community networks like? Okay, so what's the gap? How do we help you in there? Rather than, what can I do for you, because you pass the responsibility. That responsibility and accountability dynamic changes, and that's quite important. So you do a growth potential. You do need to look at efficiency and effectiveness, because that's just the nature of large institutions. We become bound by process and bureaucracy. So how do we strip that so our staff are able to do things quicker? So you've got to be able to look at that. And then you've got to make difficult political choices when you're talking about that level of reduction. And I don't think that's the same agenda here in New Zealand, because it clearly isn't. But you have to look at a whole spectrum of thought and ideas, and then energise and deliver it. Don't just talk about it. Yeah.
Any other questions?
From the floor again. Could you just talk in whatever terms you want about climate change? Your thoughts on, not specifically. Have we? We've done that. Forget that question.
Right. I think I'm going to call it quits at this stage, a little bit early. I think, first of all, Dawn, the turnout tonight is an indication of the people who, A, are really interested to hear what you have to say, and B, that they are here to welcome you. And I think we heard an impressive performance from a human being. And when you've got a human being who's also disciplined at the top of our local authority, we're in a good place. And so I'd like to say welcome, and we will do whatever we can as a little group of people to try the ideas out. And when you want to test the ideas out, come along here. We've got all sorts of views here, and we're just pleased you're here. Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.